So hello, everyone. My name is Alfred, and I'm the creative director on a game called Forgotton. And yeah, it will be out soon on PC and consoles, and published by Square Enix Collective. For those of you who don't know what the game is, let me just show you the latest teaser before we continue. This is a YouTube video. It should play. All right, here we go.
Do you know where things go when they are lost and forgotten?
Forgotten objects.
Apply for validation stickers here. Remember, you're not rotten, just forgotten.
Two humans must find their way home.
Stay vigilant. We are going home soon, Anne.
A young girl tasked with keeping order amidst a rebellion.
Tiffany, it's me. Anne? Oh, the rebels are here.
Her mission will determine the fate of the spirit world, and the choices she will make depends on you.
Watch your step, little hawk.
Hey, Forgotton! Stop it right there! Leave me alone!
Do you in fact know where you're going, Anne?
We need to go the secret way. Oh, it's scary.
Why are you defending the rebels?
Why should I tell you?
The world has abandoned us. You and I, Anne.
And as you can guess from the teaser, it's very much a story-driven cinematic experience we're aiming for. What we want to do is make players feel as if they're inside a beautiful animated feature film. And so gameplay-wise, it's a mixture between adventure game mechanics and light puzzle platforming. Adventure game in the form of you meet a lot of creatures and you have branching dialogue and branching story, and what you do will affect the storyline. And Forgotton Anne is being developed by Throughline Games, which is based in Copenhagen, Denmark. We're a small team. I co-founded the studio back in 2014, and this is our first game as a studio. And we're around a dozen members, 10 to 12, during the production stage, and everything is done in-house. So in this talk, I would like to, as the game is not out yet, I won't go into all the different situations that are in the game that might be interesting at a later point, but I would go behind the scenes to tell how we approach creating a 2D cinematic game in the 2D genre. Yes. So with regards to that, here is a short clip in-game wise, and just for those of you who couldn't catch it from the story teaser, the premise is that it takes place in the Forgotten Lands, which is inhabited by these creatures called Forgottlings. And Forgottlings are just really objects from our human world which have been lost and forgotten, and they appear in this world as creatures. And in these lands, two humans find themselves lost down here. An old man called Master Bonku, who is trying to figure a way to get them all back to the human world, and a young girl called Anne. And as Anne, the player is the enforcer in the realm, and so she gets the mission to suppress this rebellion that is taking place amongst a group of Forgottlings that is against the presence of these humans. So I'm taking this clip because we're going to delve behind the many systems that we've developed in order to create an experience like this. And of course, preceding the whole implementation stage, we have a lot of other stages, but I'll focus on this talk on the implementation of the different scenes in the game. Here we see also a very earlier sketch prototype of the final scene. So with regards to the implementation, we use Unity, and we have developed a lot of our custom tools in order to create the game. And I'll try to cover just the essential concepts that we find was important for us. So first off, if when creating a scene, we of course create a level and setting up the colliders and graphics and so forth. And as it is, Forgotton is a 2D looking game, but it's very much set up in a 3D world, which was quite a big challenge for us mid-production to switch from a 2D kind of mindset, working with orthographic camera and parallaxing mechanics to actually expanding it into a fully 3D world, which makes us much more possible to manipulate and use the camera. And also, in order to give some order to this 3D chaoticness of things, we created a level area manager tool, which in a sense we divide the level up into different interaction planes, which makes it possible for the player to also traverse between these planes through what we call bridges, which can be anything from an actual bridge in sea depth or doors or stairs. What this does, by creating this system, we can, no matter where we drop in the world will configure itself visually and also logically, so that the player can only interact with the things in her interaction plane, but also obscuring elements might fade away in and out. And so this leads us to our VFX systems, which is tightly hooked to our level setup systems. Here's an example of just I'm teleporting Anne around the level, and by doing that, we see that the whole things, facades and stuff fade in and out. So it's about automating a lot of these transitions when we have such an asset-heavy game with so much graphics. Another aspect of the VFX system, all the sprites in the game can subscribe to what we call VFX events, which can change their color and attributes. And so we just have a set amount of VFX events in each level, and depending on the triggers in the game, they can change their properties. Another thing to create a lot of the atmosphere of a cinematic world is our shade managers, which one such controls, for example, the fog, which lends a lot of atmosphere. Here I'm just playing around with the fog. And so depending also on the plane she is in and also triggers in the world, we can dynamically change the fog, which can give a totally different sense of feeling to a place, depending on how the fog is used. A key mechanic in the game revolves around a magical stone that the player has on her hand called the Arca. And with that, she is able to enter anima vision and stop time. And in anima vision, she can sense all these energy in her surroundings. We call anima, which is like a fuel to machinery or stored in canisters. But there are also the life energy of the creatures in this realm, the Forgottlings. And so she can draw and transfer from different targets in anima vision. But this also creates a totally another world behind the real world we see in the game, and we have to visually consider as well. And by using the fog and different other VFX tools we've made, we can more easily create this other world. Regarding animations, Forgotton is a traditional frame-by-frame drawn game. And I think for the main character we have over 2,000 individual drawn frames, and one of our core aims is to create, or a key concept for us is seamlessness. So we see a lot of games which distinguish between cutscenes and in-game, where we really want players to not have this distinguishment. So we have an example here of just a scene going from close-up to the player continues playing. And what it is just really big sprites being animated. Yes. And regarding animation, when we first started out, we wanted the player to feel the game to have this naturalistic weight and realism to the movement, so it's different from the more snappy action platformers of mostly today. A lot of these features we've seen in decades-old cinematic platformers from the 80s or 90s, but it's surprisingly how there are not like ready-made tools for us to use to create this kind of thing. So we had to create ways to control the feeling of the player character. And one of the ways is we devised this, what we call the chi system, which is just a fancy word for adding weight and realism through controlling the player's input and what should happen. So in each of Anne's animation clips, all the different ways she can move and play animations, we can go in and define periods in the animation and tell which input, what happens when the player uses the controls or the keyboard to give an input, whether it should fire right away, which a lot of platformers do, or they should queue up, or they should go to a specific animation afterwards to give a sense of more tactile interaction with the environment. For example, we wanted Anne to walk on each stair step and grab on the real ladder position with her hands. Not only just the usual way of playing an animation and sliding and moving the object along the path. So another interesting aspect with animation was also devising this talk system. As our game is very story heavy, our script is over 500 pages long and it's all dialogue and voice acted. We knew we had to have some kind of acting in the game, but we're a small team. It's limited how many animations we can produce. So with this talk system, we create a lot of poses, talk poses for Anne, and then it's a chart of how each pose can go into another pose without us having to trigger specific differing animations. And then, so in our cutscene director, which is another tool for us, when Anne is talking to people, we can see the wave file of the talk conversation, and then we just trigger during different parts of the conversation the emotion that Anne should be emoting during that part of the conversation, and then it will go through a series of animation clips itself based on our chart. And this leads us to the dialogue systems. As I said, we have a lot of writing in the game, and we write it in a normal word processor with more complex conversations with a lot of branching and a lot of outcomes. We prototype in Twine, and then we import the whole thing into our dialogue editor, where we can add more variables, and there are more parameters and IDs for us to use later for localization and for matching up with sounds and so forth. Regarding camera system, we want to create a very cinematic game, so cinematography is important. It's important what we show and what we don't show on the screen, and how we present the world. And so we created our camera system, which are camera zones we put up in a level to direct the experience. And these are normally either normal or static framings or dynamic camera zones. And dynamic meaning that depending on how the player moves, left or right, up or down, the camera might zoom in and out dynamically based on the direction. Each camera zone, of course, also have different parameters such as field of view, depth of field, and keep alive, how much should the camera move when you're standing still, and also an anticipation system, because depending if the player is moving in this direction, the camera might move to show a little bit what is ahead. If they're moving the other way, the camera might move the other way. And sometimes less of that, sometimes more of that, depending on the environment and what we want to show the players. So in creating a scene, we use for designers to have the optimal flexibility to experiment and prototype. We create it out of these building blocks of logic triggers we call event actions, and then we create these tools to hook them up to each other. And what they are is just triggers in the world that the designer can play animations, play this, and do that. Essentially, do any kind of event that the game offers. And then we use a more high-level flow tool to keep track of the player's progression throughout the level at certain events in the story. The game saves, or the game changes the world to a different state. Regarding our NPC system, we have over 100 creatures, of forgotten creatures in the game, making the game world feel alive. And so we decided early on that how should we approach the NPC system? What we ended up doing was making it grid-based. We didn't need very advanced AI. All the NPCs are using a grid we set up, and they're limited to moving around in this grid, but they have different behaviors, different states of behaviors assigned to them at different points in time to make them move differently throughout the grid. Here we see an example of just a Forgotton grid throughout the level, and there are more than 60 grid points. Oh, that was quick. Okay, so there is more stuff to it. I didn't get into audio, which is also, of course, a very important part of a cinematic experience. For that, we use Wise and to create very dynamic transitions between music. One challenge was also, as we recorded our music with the Copenhagen Philharmonic Orchestra in a collaboration, was to also how to record it in a way that we had a lot of different stems, tracks, in order for us to increase the intensity. Okay, I think, I don't know, maybe I'm running out of time. So, yeah, maybe some questions if anybody is interested in hearing about any kind of aspect. Yeah.
The game is obviously really beautiful, and the art looks really work intensive. So, can you talk about your art team? How many people are doing that? Great
our art team is very, very small. Our art director is our art producer, our content creator as well. He takes care of almost all of the art assets. And then we have a team of, we have a lead animator, we have another animator. We are a team of around 3 animators on the team, where one of them is also in charge of creating the Forgotton creatures, whereas the other animators focuses on a few main characters that are frame by frame drawn, because a lot of our Forgotton creatures are a mix between frame by frame and tweening. Yes, and so with the art, is there anything specific you want to know about the art? Right. And even though I'm the creative director, I'm also very hands-on in doing compositing, a lot of different look work, tinkering with the look of the game. And then we have a technical artist we've had throughout the production, which kind of works closely together with the art team, so to create the tools that they need in order to create the look of the game. And that was very helpful to have a very dedicated developer on the team that was technical and could work with the art team.